Worship leading to thanksgiving,
Mhm.
leading to prayer, leading to unselfish service. I'm going to keep teaching this class until I get it.
Gard is a practitioner with a rich background in comparative religion and a deep commitment to community service. Gard's journey began in 1972 when he discovered the Urantia Book while studying at Stanford University. This pivotal moment led him to a lifelong dedication to understanding and teaching the principles of divine expression through family dynamics. With a PhD in comparative religion and over 20 years teaching experience at the University of Nevada, Gard brings a wealth of knowledge to our discussion.
Gard's extensive involvement in various nonprofits and community initiatives, including the Children's Advocacy Alliance and Compassionate Las Vegas, underscores his commitment to service and advocacy. His work exemplifies the application of spiritual principles to real-world challenges. It's a model for integrating faith and action.
Well, welcome everyone, and it's a joy to be with you this morning and a joy to share what I regard as the core of our inspiration around family and the appreciation of which leads to, in my opinion, a very practical and well-developed understanding of how family operates and how we can enhance and amplify the qualities of family life. The Trinity is the beginning and the ending of all of this, and it's the core inspiration to appreciation and understanding of family. And so I begin with an image that was introduced by Richard Rohr. It's a Russian icon done by a fellow named Rublev. And it shows the Trinity at meal. And we know that Jesus got his best business done over breaking bread. And the extraordinary thing about this icon is not so much, although this is extraordinary, that the Trinity is at the table, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, but there was originally, according to art historians, and I'm putting the cursor around this box, there was originally a mirror on this icon. And so, just as I said earlier, the mirror suggests that we are invited to the table of the Trinity. And I think one of the greatest mysteries and greatest revelations associated with the Urantia book is the appreciation that not only is our divine destiny moving us toward the Trinity on paradise, but that the Trinity on paradise is already indwelling each of you. That's extraordinary. And when you truly understand that, as Cher said, through prayer and through worship, through thanksgiving and through service, a light goes on and a quality of assurance, as the Urantia Book defines religion, assurance which manifests as joy and peace and love. And so indeed, we're invited to the divine dance. And each of us can see ourselves in this mirror as participants in the experiential realization of Trinity. So let us begin with the original family and the appreciation of that original family. And we began with a quote, which I'm sure you're familiar with: on a planet of sex creatures, in a world where the impulse of parental emotions are inherent in the hearts of its intelligent beings, the term father becomes a very expressive and appropriate name for the eternal God. And so we have the first paper, which gives us a deep appreciation of God as our universal Father. As well, and we say in improv, yes, God is our Father, and as the first source and center of all things and beings, God transcends gender. So our appreciation of God is most importantly to be anchored in the realization of God's value nature, which is living love. Wow. What we learn in the Urantia book is that all of the words that were used are, as Christie used to say, a revelation in and of themselves. So the term realization is a term of art in the Urantia Book, and it means an experiential spiritual attainment. It is profoundly a movement of spiritual energy which progresses toward incarnated qualities of assurance, joy, peace, love. These are the fruits of the Spirit. And that word incarnated is really important because it's not just a temporary experience, it's a 24/7 experience, which, as I have just finished my 71st tour around the sun, more and more that quality of joy just bubbles up from within in such a mysterious and such a delightful manner that I am jumping like these children are jumping for joy. And here's my family. The experience of being a part of this family has been transformational, as all of you who are fathers and mothers know, and especially transformational as my son, Michael, at the age of 27, came in one day and declared to mom and dad that I'm really a woman. And again, as she said, do you accept me? And I exclaimed to her, the contract when you were born was unconditional love, and that ain't changing ever. Family is the most significant experience and why it's so important in our progression of soul through this universe. So the Trinity sets the bar for family function, expression, inspiration, all levels of creature life to aspire to the defining values of Trinity: love, mercy, and ministry. We'll be talking a lot about those three values: truth, beauty, goodness, justice, power, sovereignty, creating a dynamic pattern for understanding the foundation of divine expression through the idea and ideal of family life. So we can use the image of a water wheel to imagine the Trinity. We hear this image in the following passage, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. All true love is from God, and we receive the divine affection as we bestow this love upon our fellows. Love is dynamic. The great circuit of love is from the Father, through sons and daughters to brothers and sisters, and hence to the Supreme. So there's a dynamic action associated with the Trinity, which we can employ in our personal spiritual journey, as well as in the spiritual journey of our families. And again, the Trinity gives us the pattern by which to move that energy. And all three values, love, mercy, and ministry, are required to move this great water wheel. So we cannot possess it of ourselves. We cannot hold on to it. We have to, through mercy and compassion, looking at the suffering of the world and around us, we have to move it into ministry, some kind of meaningful ministry that touches not only our family lives, but also our community lives. Not only our community lives, but also our political lives. Not just our political lives, but our global lives as cosmic citizens. And so this dynamic water wheel is really what got the whole shooting match started, as Bill might say. We have, again, just so much gratitude and appreciation for the fact that we are here. And as I like to tell my students, there are only really three universal rights: the right to exist with dignity, the right to belong with compassion, and the right to grow through selfless service. And so this beautiful image shows that love is always flowing. As I tell my students, it's just a matter of being in a receptive mode, which prayer and worship and unselfish service put us into, to receive that unconditional love moment to moment, day to day, year to year, from now to eternity. So a very powerful lesson that we get in the Urantia revelation is that self-consciousness is in essence a communal consciousness. God and us. God and us. As a primary attribute of personality, self-consciousness is impossible without awareness of others. This strips away the pretense of individualism as a solo experience, mere egotism. Martin Buber, the great Jewish philosopher, theologian, said, "In the beginning was the relation." And the Trinity is that universal fact that in the beginning is relationship. Not just one God, not a God, it's three gods who are in relationship, sharing communal awareness. So the very beginning of reality is a relational reality, one in which we are a twinkle in the eye. It'll take a few billion years for us to get here, but here we are. And so what can we learn from this blessed pattern of family called the Trinity? As a solo experience, individualism equates to narcissism, an unhealthy quality. As a relational being, we exist in a fabric of expanding circles, concentric circles, if you will, of connection, starting with the self, knowing that the Trinity dwells within each of us, to the family, to the community, to the nation, to the planet, to the cosmos. So one of my favorite poets, Marie Rainier Rilke, who was the secretary to a very famous sculptor, Rodin, wrote, "A billion stars go spinning through the night, blazing high above your head. But in you is the presence, the Trinity, that will be when all the stars are dead." So this eternal attribute is part of each of us and part of our families, part of our communities, part of our nation, part of our world, part of the universe reality that we all live, move, and have our being. So it's an astounding fact that not only in destiny we go to paradise to meet the Trinity, but the Trinity has already met us. If we don't expand our self-consciousness to encompass the largest whole, called in different traditions different things, God, Tao, Brahman, we will fall prey, and we do, to narcissism, nepotism, provincialism, and nationalism, which the book tells us is the greatest of all diseases on the planet now, all of which have unfortunate, unintended consequences. And here's my favorite little guy in this presentation. We're born within the divine womb of a communal consciousness, within the womb of the Trinity, both literally and spiritually. Our greatest adventure consists in the well-balanced and sane effort to advance the borders of self-consciousness out through the dim realms of embryonic soul consciousness. And there this little fellow's getting started. And I just want to say to each of you, we have a sacred obligation to do whatever we can to make the journey of this little fellow one of dignity, one in which he, and maybe it's a she, experiences compassion and mercy and unfailing forgiveness, and one in which there is a quality of hope, of ministry, and of growth, of unselfish service. So we have an opportunity to be what I call cycle breakers, moving toward those divine realities. So to know God and become like God requires an experiential appreciation of and relationship to divinity, in particular the Trinity, to say yes to the divine dance. There's that mirror down there in which you can see your own face within the framework of expanding familial relationships. So we can talk about the nuclear family, and there's a lot to talk about there, but family, as we know, extends beyond our nuclear families to the community. So what are we doing in our communities to the larger political entity, what are we doing in that quality of family, and to the global family, and beyond to the cosmic family, to feel our connection to the Supreme. So the Trinity dwells within each of us. The thought adjuster, the Spirit of truth, the Holy Spirit inspire, impress, and empower us to align with divine reality, with love, which becomes mercy/compassion, which becomes ministry/unselfish service. That is the divine water wheel: love, mercy, ministry. Without all three operational, the relationship is stagnant. Our connection is stagnant. So imagine, sometimes tell my students, I was a former CPA, imagine you have $1 billion in a bank account down at the community bank, and you have the account number, it's in your name, and it's there available to you, and you spend your whole life and you neglect it. You don't pay any attention to it, and what the energy of that might do to be a blessing to others. Well, that's just a little bit of what it means to have the Trinity within us. And so can we imagine, right, having these qualities within us and not activating the water wheel? Not activating the water wheel, which moves the big stone in the middle, which creates bread, which creates life-sustaining energy. And so let us all commit ourselves to access that love through worshipful communion. And when real love sees suffering or limitation, it transforms or transmutes into compassion. So let us not be blind to the suffering around us. Let us see it clearly, not only close, but also far. And when compassion ponders suffering, it is illuminated by wise ministry. And that, my friends, is how love operates. That is the water wheel of love, compassion, and ministry. And you can't get, in my opinion, and Jesus echoes this in the Beatitudes, you can't get to peacemaking or real ministry without going through mourning. Blessed are those that mourn, for they shall be comforted. And you can't get to peacemaking unless you go through compassion, which is not just cognitive compassion, it's effective compassion. It's actually feeling your link to the suffering of the world. And so I share with my spiritual companion, every day I am crushed. I am crushed by the weight of events on our planet, by the level of suffering on our planet. And at the same time, every day I am in bliss because of the quality of the Trinity that dwells within me and the opportunity to access, to experience the fullness of the Trinity's love and compassion and ministry to my life, and the opportunity to take that energy and move the great wheel in my life. So that is precisely why we're told to neglect not your daily worship. And as some of you know, I always say, once is good for maintenance, twice is good for improvement, and occasionally a spiritual vacation with the Trinity. Marvin Garwin and I just, we enjoy taking retreats. We just got back from a retreat over on the coast where we were in grand silence, worshiping, communing, praying, walking through beautiful gardens. And so to neglect not our daily worship and to realize that we can be experiencing communion 24/7. I call it a divine tickle. If you get it around 3 a.m., pay attention. It's your thought adjuster saying, I know it's a little early, but we'll catch up on your sleep. Come on, join me. We have some dancing to do. And this is one of the most powerful lines in the book because we know the great commandment is to be perfect, even as our Father in heaven is perfect, and to know that worship makes us increasingly like the being who is worshiped. So let's be clear. God is much, much more than a father, but incorporates the highest and most noble traits of a father, a universal father, just as the eternal Son incorporates the highest and most noble traits of a mother and a son, just as the infinite Spirit incorporates the highest and most noble traits of a child and a sibling, often regarded in many traditions around the planet as feminine, Sophia. This interweaving of roles suggests the dynamic nature of the Trinity and of each and every person as we move through the variety of roles that emerge in the context of family. And so we know from our beautiful book that Jesus experienced all these roles. Yes, he was indeed a little bit of a mother, helping Mother Mary with her duties for the children, but also a father, also a brother, also a spiritual companion. And that piece right there, spiritual companion, is a really critical function that each of us holds in our family life and in our life of community. To be a spiritual companion to each and every person that we meet, to greet them with a smile as Jesus did, and though we may say nothing, to in some fashion create a ripple effect within their own heart. What we see is that all these roles are one, a unity of love that manifest within the diversity of creation as compassion leading to active ministry. To foster these relationships, our communal consciousness with the Trinity requires contemplative practices that adopt the attitudes of humility, curiosity, patience, forbearance, purity of intention. And then second, mourning, compassion, peacemaking, and long-suffering, which we know as the Beatitudes. Clyde Bedell, one of the members of the forum and a dear friend, said, we should really pay attention to these Beatitudes. I call these the Eightfold Path of Jesus. Like there's an Eightfold Path of the Buddha, like there's 8 limbs of yoga in Hinduism. There's an Eightfold Path of Jesus, and it is these 8 attitudes. And so we should study them very carefully and incorporate practices which allow us to manifest these attitudes in our life. When we cultivate those attitudes, we increasingly grow in the realization of the flow of love, mercy, and ministry, of the flow of truth, beauty, and goodness, and even the flow of justice, power, and sovereignty understood divinely. Part of Compassionate Las Vegas, we have a social justice program, and we're introducing, believe it or not, restorative justice to our justice system. And we have amazing stories of restoration and rehabilitation. 14-year-old kid who was going to be thrown out of school. We did a restorative circle, and the kid now is following the trade of his grandfather. He's been put in another school, and at 14 years old, he's no longer the leader of a gang. I think this is what justice is about. I think this is what Jesus attempted to do. And so we can turn the wheels in our own communities, moving these words into practical realities. When that flow appears in our experience, when the water wheel is turning, there is a growing alignment with the divine way, which results in the assurance of the fruits of the Spirit, even in the context of great suffering and difficulty. It's that passage in paper 110 that suggests, even in the midst of all this difficulty, God walks with us. As good old John Zebedee said, perfect love casts out all fear. Just allow yourself, we call it visio divina, allow yourself to look into the eyes of that child. And again, what are we going to do with our little bit of time and energy while we're still on this planet to make that life, that child's life, spiritually significant, Joy, as Teilhard de Chardin said, is the most infallible sign of the presence of God. I always say, if you walk into a church and the minister does not have a smile on his face, turn around, don't walk, run. So as I said earlier, the endowment of imperfect beings with the freedom entails inevitable tragedy. It is the nature of the perfect ancestral deity to universally and affectionately share these sufferings in loving companionship. And that's why I can be crushed, at the same time, feel the bliss of being carried by the Trinity. So I tell my students at the university, synergy, synchronicity, serendipity, the three S's, S cubed, become manifest, aligning with the energetic circuits of God, matter, mind, and spirit, aligning with the perfect will of God. This is what begins to emerge when the water wheel is turning. And we are connecting with our angels who are helping to guide our way. We're connecting with our thought adjusters and all the unseen help that is here present in this very moment, leading us to a quality of life which is a manifestation of the Trinity.
Gard, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I don't have enough adjectives to tell you how you've touched my heart with your presentation.
And I have a lot of emotions just welling up inside me.
Back at you both. I tell my students, Bill, at the university, I'm going to keep teaching this class until I get it.
And what I have to say about it is worship, worship, worship.
Worship leading to thanksgiving, right?
Mhm.
Leading to prayer, leading to unselfish service. The unspoken ninth beatitude is, blessed are those who are grateful, for they indeed experience the power of God's presence.
Indeed.
Well, with that one, I'm going to invite our panel out.
So what do you guys think? Vicky?
I loved hearing about the Beatitudes.
Yeah.
I've known that you have been teaching about the Beatitudes, and I'm just totally amazed by them as well. I know they're written in their entirety in the Bible, as well as the Urantia Book, although the Urantia Book rearranges them a little bit, but they're the same. And I guess I've always wondered, how they got into the Bible, actually, because they just seemed like something that how could the apostles have possibly remembered all of that from the ordination sermon? And I've just puzzled about that a lot. But thank you for bringing up that the Beatitudes. I loved hearing about it.
Gard, you talked about you can't be a peacemaker without mourning.
Yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit more?
I have discovered on the path that my greatest inspirations come from tears. And I regard this moment as a resistance moment. I watch a lot of resistance movies. And when I see the quality of courage and compassion and wisdom exercised by those people during World War II, and they were in all countries. Germany wasn't the only issue in World War II. There was a lot of collaborators. And so those resistance fighters had to deal with a lot. And so again, when I watch these movies, Bill, I am brought to tears. When I read the paper, Basil Pennington, one of my teachers, suggested that we read the paper and we pray over each article that we see, because most of what we find in the media is negative and stories of suffering, that I cry. And those tears are tears of illumination in my experience. So unless we can mourn, really mourn, not just in the head, but in the heart, and feel the pain and suffering of those who were lost on the festival field at the kibbutz in Israel, and of those 16,000 children who are no longer, I cry. So mourning is absolutely necessary. And that without mourning, there is no compassion. And without compassion, there's no real peacemaking.
Thank you, Gard, for clarifying that. Marvin?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say, Gard, as always, thank you for such an inspiring and far-ranging presentation. So really appreciate it. And you and I've had lots of conversation about the primacy of family as a central metaphor for our relationship with God and with each other, and about the importance of the Trinity. And so I really appreciate your focus on the Trinity as the original family. And having spent some time thinking about this, one of the things that absolutely blows me away when I think about it is that before there was anything, the Bible, the scriptures describe God's initial act as creating light, right? But the Urantia revelation really moves it to a very different place. What they say is that out of this primordial state of the I am, before God had just was, right? God had never done anything. And God wasn't really a person at that point. God was simply a being that had never done anything, had never acted. The very first thing God did was to become the creator, first to become a person, and a creator person of a created person. That was the very first thing God thought to do, and that they together became co-creators to a third person, and that the second and third were in relationship as sister and brother, in a sense, as siblings. So the very first intention and act in all of reality is for the I am to become a family, right? Parent, child, co-parent, sister, brother. Really quite astonishing, and setting the pattern for all of reality and the rest of the cosmos forever, the entire cycle of reality that's unfolding currently and will unfold in the age of the ultimate and the absolute. It's really astonishing to think that this initial act of creation was the creation of family as the pattern for everything in creation. So it's no wonder that it's such a powerful reality for even us all the way down here at our fledgling finite level.
And again, what I really want to see us do is to turn the light on. To turn the light on, to be illuminated by the presence of the Trinity. And oftentimes we spend too much time talking about love and not enough time talking about compassion and mystery. And so we have to have all three engaged in order for that water wheel to be working. Love doesn't work without the other two. The Trinity doesn't work without all three. My dear sister, Olga, who I just love you, and I so appreciate you.
When I was listening to you, I was thinking about the idea of the family of God, because it's true that the Trinity is the first, the core of this family, but now we have an extended family, so to speak. And I thought also about how Jesus tried to talk about the family of God when he was on earth, but people didn't understand, or they understood better the idea of the kingdom of God. And I wonder if are we ready to understand in its fully meaning the idea of the family of God now on earth, not only among the Urantia Book readers that I guess we understand, but in the whole world? Are we more ready than 2,000 years ago?
All of us on this screen have a daily contemplative practice. And to the extent that people are opening up to contemplative practices, which again, Marvin and I can go back 50 years and say, centering prayer, these worship, these things. When I was first introduced to the Urantia community, worship was basically singing out of an old hymnal. And that was our deepest appreciation of worship. So I can say that we as a community have come a long way. And now it is our sacred obligation to carry this message and to encourage people to engage in that divine appointment, which it is an appointment. God stands at the door and knocks. God's ready to dance. Are we ready to dance? So when I was in Taipei a couple months ago, there's a lovely saying which all of you are familiar with in a different way, but it says, underneath the cherry blossom tree, there are no strangers. And so we have the privilege of being ambassadors of that new reality, of coming out from the cherry blossom tree and sharing the reality of the joy and the peace and the love that come from our contemplative practices. So, Olga, thank you. And I do believe we're in the middle of what I would call an axial age, which is a planetary global shift. I'm involved with a number of organizations that are doing global work, and I see this across the board, that something really exciting is coming and that the ship has sailed out of the sheltered bay. So in the name of resiliency, make sure you attend to your daily practice of worship and service. Miss Vicky.
Your last slide, you had the word glory be, and it reminded me of this recurring interlude in liturgy. Glory be to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning and is now and will be forever. And I listened to a podcast from what's called the Daily Office. I do that once in a while from the Episcopal Church. And it just seems like, they're always bringing this recurring interlude of the glory be in there. It's just a continual reminder of the Trinity, which is very effective. And of course, at first, I kept thinking, well, it's not quite, it's not the universal Father and the eternal Son and the infinite Spirit, but they do say in the Urantia Book that it's really the Christian concept of the Trinity as a universal Father, the Creator Son of Nebadon, and the Mother Spirit of the local universe, and so that helped a lot when I'd be hearing these recurring interludes. But I like that constant reminder in the liturgy.
Thank you, Vicky. And I will share a secret. I think Marvin knows this, but glory be is my centering word. Whenever I use those two words, I am instantly brought into communion. And so I try to repeat them like the pilgrim as often as I can during the day, because it immediately puts me into a state of communion. Marvin.
Yeah, I wanted to respond just briefly to Olga's question. In one way of understanding it, the primary mission of the Urantia revelation and the evolutionary movement that grows out of this revelation is to move the culture, the global culture, out of the kingdom of heaven metaphor as the symbolism that Jesus was forced to compromise with, into the symbolism of the family of God, as the higher symbolism of the next age of a higher civilization. So I actually think we have a critical mission as a movement to move forward with that symbolism. And so for me, it's incredible that we are focusing this way on the family and the family of God as central to the mission of this revelation, and our mission as an evolutionary movement to uplift global culture. So
I'll just make a quick plug here, because some of you know Pato Bantan and I have been involved in a mission to Africa, 10 nations. We created something called the Spirit of Ubuntu. If you go to YouTube, you can see Ubuntu Now. And Ubuntu is a very powerful family term, which we have to, when we're approaching different cultures, we have to be sensitive to those cultures, as my sister Marilyn always reminds me. And Ubuntu means I am because we are because I am. And so again, I am because we are. All of life is part of this family in a broader sense. And we are because I am, which suggests the absolute wonder and uniqueness of every child of God. And that every child of God, as I suggest, deserves three rights: the right to exist with dignity, the right to belong with compassion, and the right to become exactly who you were intended to become. For God's will is unique to each of us, and only we can discover that through our inward journey.
And this is for me personally, that just spoke to my heart when you were talking. And one was about the importance of love mercy ministry in your life. And I know from an early age, I learned that, even though I I couldn't define it, but I learned that from my mother early. I mean, the love and the mercy and the ministry that she gave me when I was a child. And when we got married and we had children, I learned that was immediately transparent with my kids. I mean, that just came forth. It came out. And the importance of that in family relationships is immense. It's the unconditional love. And the love mercy ministry is part of that unconditional love. Is showing forth that unconditional love. Another thing you said that I thought was just really wonderful is that be a spiritual companion to everyone. And people respond. People respond. So, just to a smile, to a word of kindness. I've had people in the checkup line, when I say something about people that God's blessed you, they quit taking care of people behind me and want to talk about it. So people respond very much. And so being a spiritual companion to everyone every day, all the time, is just so important in our lives. And thank you for reminding me of that.
Thank you, Bill. Lao Tzu has a very lovely saying in the Tao Te Ching. He says, in meditation, go deep into the heart. In dealing with others, be gentle and be kind. And I don't know, in Chinese verbiage, I think that's the gospel. So, Ms. Olga.
Yeah, one of the things that I liked of your presentation was that you talked about love a lot, and the fact that the love is dynamic. It's not something to retain, to keep to ourselves, but to give everywhere and to everyone. So it's something that I think we don't have always this take this into account, because we think that we deserve the love but not giving love. You know what I mean. So I think it's really important in this context of family and marriage to learn that the love is to give. It's unconditional. It's something that it must flow, so to speak, to everyone, and not only among the people that are around us and that we love, but also to the people that we not hate, but that are not very friendly to us, so to speak. So I think it's something to consider, and I love that you emphasized that in your presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Olga. And again, this is why the Beatitudes are so important, because in every relationship, we should be humble. We should know that we don't know. We should be curious. We should ask questions, even with those, as you say, that we may have a different perspective or worldview. We should be curious. So I like the improv words, yes, and. Yes, I hear what you're saying, and let me share with you my experience. And then meekness, which is about forbearance and patience, to be patient with one another, to not have to get the last word in, to really deeply listen. And then the last is blessed are the pure in heart, for they, shall see God. And purity of heart really, to me, suggests intention. What is our intention every morning when we awake? Is it our intention to take a walk like Bill and Cher do and say, well, Father, what do you want us to do today? Or is the intention to do something else? So again, those attitudes really are the magic elixir to experiencing the fullness of the presence of the Trinity. So thank you for that question, Olga. Marvin?
You spoke a lot about compassion, And when I think compassion, I think of both the second and third persons of the Trinity, the eternal Son and the infinite Spirit. And I know, Gard, you've been really active in what's really emerging as a major global movement, the Compassionate Cities and the Compassion Movement, and forming Compassionate Las Vegas. And I wonder if you could maybe say a little more about that whole movement and how it's unfolding and just what you've been doing with that, because it's really quite impressive.
Well, people are realizing that the old ways don't work. And so we take that word in Compassionate Las Vegas and we ask, okay, how are we going to translate this to the street? So we translate it in 5 ways. The first is social justice, which I spoke a little bit to. The second is mental health, which we're doing a lot of resiliency training here as a result of the October 1st shooting and so many other distressing events here in the community. And the third is the environment. These kids, when you see what happens when they're touching a tomato plant or picking some lettuce or even eating some lettuce or going to farmer's market and learning how to be a farmpreneur, is just magical, magical. And then education, which is how we're approaching education. And too much of our education is really left-brained. And so we need to learn how we put our kids through Waldorf, how to open up the other side, the creative, imaginative side of our brains. So we're doing circles of trust in our charter schools now, which we've introduced. And to see these kids say, what I'm grateful for, what's on my heart, is there an apology I need to make? And to see these kids in circle doing this work is absolutely mind-blowing. And then the last piece is homelessness, where we're attempting to create community. We have 140 acres and we want to create a community of tiny homes, which is economically sustainable. And Austin, Texas has a wonderful model called Community First Village. And so compassion has to, in some fashion, translate to the realities that are facing us as communities, as nations, and as a planet.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it really reminds me of the Supreme, as the sort of the unfolding and result of all of this familial service and work in the world.
Yeah, and you said that the infinite spirit is kind of compassion. Well, I would say infinite spirit is compassionate action.
Yeah.
So unless compassion translates into action, the water wheel doesn't turn.
Yeah.
And in order for compassion to translate into action, compassion has to see suffering and respond to it.
And I have one question in it, and we've only got like 1 minute left, so it may not be possible, but how do we restore self-respect in anyone? But homelessness is one of them, and Jesus would stop at nothing to restore someone's self-respect.
So that's why we're trying to create community for homeless people. It's not enough to just feed them. It's not enough to just give them a bed for the night. You have to create community. And when you create community, I have a friend, Alan Graham, who runs the Community First Village in Austin. He says, I only have 2 rules here. One is pay your rent, and their rent is like $200 a month. And so you sweep Bill's porch and Bill sweeps your porch and you've got rent. And the second rule that Alan has is don't be a jerk.
That's the hard one, though.
Yeah. So that's what the Trinity enables us to do, is not to be a jerk, to be an ambassador of loving kindness.